welcome to another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions. My name is Molly McGrath, and I am founder of this Office Altering podcast. You can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. If you are a returning listener, welcome back, and thank you for hanging with us and following us. All right, so today I am so excited for our conversation. Jessica, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Jessica is the founder of Fund Ease, and I'll put it in the chat, in the show notes and all that, and direct you to her website, and she can tell you a little bit more about her business a little bit in the show. But today I really want to talk about, our topic is about, as many of you know, I have a staffing and hiring agency for small solo law firms. And I have for, since the late 90s. And we've been hiring and staffing for law firms across the country, like I said, since the late 90s. And it is amazing. The number one thing we hear from attorneys when they call us and ask us to support them is, I don't have time to train anyone. Don't send me people unless they have experience, especially in the estate planning and elder law. And actually, in this day and age, in any area, there is such a shortage in the legal industry. That hasn't changed in about the past 5 years. And I don't see it changing anytime soon, where there is a shortage of associate attorneys or a shortage of paralegals, especially in the estate planning area. There's around 20,000 plus law firms in the country. When you think about that compared to other, DUI, bankruptcy, family law, what have you, that's nothing. So when you find people that have experience in drafting, funding, probate, trust, admin, Medicaid applications, what have you, you're looking for a needle in a haystack. And so often people will say to me, I need someone with experience. I'm like, all right, number one, you have to know this is a big order. And they'll say, I don't have time to train people. And I'm like, if you don't have time to give your employees time and attention, that's what human beings need. Even if they come with the greatest killer resume, you're still going to have to train them on your standards, on your systems, on how you operate in your law firm. Sometimes they come with really bad habits because of the law firms that they've come from. Maybe it's a different way that you do, but you're still going to have to give them time and attention. Nobody is going to, I don't care how much experience they have, be able to roll in and you not talk to them. People are not robots. They don't want to work in a law firm where they get zero, a time, attention, water, food, whatever it might be. So, yeah, right, Jessica? Isn't it amazing?
Yeah, we need coffee to keep running.
All right. So reason I have Jessica here with me today is that I love your backstory, Jessica. Tell us a little bit about how you landed in this industry. I'll let you tell us.
Sure. So, going way back, I used to be a professional water skier. So in my 20s, I water skied in the summer and I worked at restaurants in the winter. So I didn't really have much background. I got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can't water ski my whole life. So I settled down and I looked for a Craigslist ad. I wanted to do some sort of admin assistant. I didn't really care what field it was in. I was just looking for sort of an office job that was starting from a high school, college degree, at an associate's degree. And I found an ad for a admin job for a trust funding company and started out working for this company of two ladies. They started a business from the ground up. They worked from their home, which was just down the road from where I lived at the time. And I would go and work and prepare things for the mailbox and bring them to the post office and just very simple jobs. From there, they delegated more and more tasks to me. And it was something that really was working with my brain mindset. That I was very detail oriented and able to fill these forms out without typing the wrong social security number, or my attention to detail really worked really well with that line of business of funding. So I learned and continued doing more and more with the business. And that's pretty much my background of where I started. And I've now been doing it for over 10 years. I've never actually worked in an actual law firm office. So that's kind of interesting that I'm working for all these law firms with the experience that I've built over the years, just communicating virtually with them.
Yeah. So, and you missed two big chunks of that part of the two ladies. And many of you all know Lainey. Lainey owns back office drafting solutions. And it was Lainey and Susan who hired Jessica and brought her on. And I remember that way back when they're like, all right, can you just talk to her and make sure we're making a good decision hiring? In the first 5 minutes, I'm like, yes. She's asking powerful questions. She's conscious. She's detailed. She's willing to take directions, what have you. So that's hiring a human being versus a human doing. And I want to highlight, she had zero experience. And one thing that I love that you said is like, I paid attention to detail, to social security numbers, to naming conventions, to making sure there were no typos in the names. I cannot tell you how many law firms that I talk to on a daily, weekly basis where they have, 20-year experienced paralegals and the attorneys reviewing documents. And they're like, I'm paying this person so much money. They have 20 years of experience. And every single time I get documents, there's typos. Typically in the most simplistic areas, names, birth dates, social security numbers, things of that nature. So to hear attorneys say you have an associate's degree, zero experience working in a law firm, zero experience in the funding area, and you're not making zero mistakes in regards to social security and naming conventions. Like, I think every law firm would be like, I'll pay you $100,000 just for that, because it's such a frustration. And then my confidence goes in the toilet, because if they can't even get the most simplistic things, now I have to spend an hour reviewing this entire document because I have no faith that the rest of it's right, because we can't even get a social security number.
Might as well do it yourself, right?
Yep. Yeah. And I'm sure you hear that all the time. So then Susan and Lainey decide they're going to sell the company. Susan got out and Lainey was slammed with drafting. She's like, I hate funding. You hear this all the time. There's no fun in funding and there's no money in funding, and people hate funding. And they're like, and Lainey realized, she's like, I'm slammed with drafting. So I'm going back to, she sold the company. They sold the company to a national organization, and you went with the national organization. And I know because I owned that national organization, and we brought you in and we tried to bring in back office drafting or back office funding and offering that as a service. At that time, it was called SOS, right?
Yep. SOS. Correct.
Yeah. And so then, so you go from having no experience, which you guys, you attorneys, whoever's worked with me, you hear me screaming this from the rooftops constantly. Stop hiring people based on their resume. Hire them as human beings. So you go from zero experience to running a funding company, being the rock star, the two partners get out, you get sold to a national organization where the national organization's like, I want the girl, I want the Jessica, because she's the girl who does this stuff. She knows this. And then you leave that organization and you go and start your own business.
Yep.
Like,
here
pause for a second. First of all, congratulations. Funding is no joke, right?
No, it's time consuming. It takes a lot of attention to detail and focus.
Yes. Yeah. A tremendous amount of focus. And it's tedious. You're dealing with the client, you're dealing with the law firms, you're dealing with the financial institutions. I always tell people, think of funding as pretty much a babysitting job, right? It's like herding bed bugs.
There's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, exactly. So, I want our listeners to really listen to us and grab onto this. And Jessica, just how her story of how amazing. How many years has it been, Jessica?
Since I started my business, I started in 2014. So that's 6 years.
Oh, wow. How long since when you started with Lainey and Susan?
I think that was 2011. So 9 years.
Wow. Oh my gosh. It seems like 40 years ago. That's amazing. Oh my goodness. So 9 years, look at what you've accomplished in 9 years. And, I cannot tell the attorneys enough. Look at Jessica. So you're going to hire paralegals that have all this experience, or associate attorneys that have all this experience, right? And then they're constantly getting hit by recruiters that are, offering them more money. I have law firms now that are saying, okay, well, to be competitive and to get attorney, we're going to offer monthly massages, manicures, pedicures, like they're just beefing up the benefits to get quality people, right? But very rarely do I work with an experienced paralegal and or associate that are still left standing at the same place 9 years later. And you're still in the same industry, and your growth and your evolution because of your commitment and your passion to the attention to detail, to doing good work for attorneys, for your love of funding, which when people say that, I'm like, oh gosh, you're a rock star.
I'm a special type, I guess.
Yes, you are a purple unicorn for sure. Yes. And so I want our listeners to really hear about take a chance on people and start hiring and looking at people from the human side of it. I right now I have probably 2 law firms that I'm working with, and they're like, nope, they don't have enough experience. Nope, not enough experience. We don't have time to train. I'm like, you understand that recruiting and staffing is sales. Like as a recruiter, my job is to sell you and your law firm. My job is to get them so excited and inspired about the culture, about how you are different than every other law firm because you care about your employees. You want to spend time with them. So flip your language, I guess it is, of I don't have time. If you don't have time to train them, the message that you're actually sending, because and they're like, you make sure you say when you're interviewing these people, we don't have time to train them. I'm like, do you understand the message that's coming across is that you don't have time to be with them? Like you're not going to spend any time with your employee. Like that's really hard for us to sell, especially in this day and age, especially since COVID. I mean, so many people are really taking a deep dive into how they spend their time, especially at work. I don't care if they're working from home. I don't care if they're working in an office, what have you, but they're really taking stock and going back to basics and being like, who do I want to spend my time with and who's worthy of my time? Like I want to be in places where I feel like I'm making a difference. I feel energized by the people I spend my time with in a place of collaboration. And if you're not going to spend time with them, that's the message you're sending when you say, I don't have time to train is you're not worthy of my time. I'm not going to give you my time. And who the hell wants to work at a place like that? Right?
Yeah, not me.
So you have no experience, Jessica, and you go shack up with Lainey and Susan working out of their home, the proverbial starting a business out of the garage. What would some advice that you would give to our attorney listeners and our other employee listeners that might be in a job where they're not getting time, they're not getting attention, they have this skill set, but what would, from a training perspective, if you could, what were some of the things that Lainey and Susan did that poured into you that allowed you to be where you are today?
Sure. They were great at being bosses. They were awesome bosses. They were one of my favorite bosses ever. Just being a friend with them. Susan brought me into her home every day to work. That's where their office was. And she treated me like family. We would make breakfast together. She'd keep me for dinner at night. It was just the personal touch. Our desks were right next to each other. So we'd have conversation throughout the day and just a chit chat and, hey, I don't know what I'm doing here. And she was right there to help me all the time. And yeah, it's just having that personal touch is really important.
And you said, she treated you like a human being and invested, I care about this relationship because think about trauma. Like if you're walking in every day and feel like you're walking on eggshells, I love what you just said. You're like, hey, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what my next right move is. Help me out. I'm stuck. So often I will get phone calls from people, and Lainey and I've talked about this for years, where they're like, she's got to go. I'm firing her. She always has questions. She's not getting it. He's blah, blah, blah. Every single time they're like, hey, I don't know what to do. And they need to go. Like, what? No, you should be really grateful that you have an employee that is willing to speak up. So many employees suffer in silence and they're afraid to ask a question because of that behavior. Right. So Susan created, there's an amazing book called Crucial Conversations, and how to have them. You need to start with heart. So Susan and Lainey started with heart. And number 2 is you have to make it safe. So many law firms, so many bosses do not make it safe. People and employees will call Lainey and I, we talk about this in our book, Don't Be a Yes Check, is that so many employees will call and they're like, they just puke on us. They're just riddled with fear and terror because of the jerk of a boss that they have. And they'll share this with us. We're like, this is amazing that you care this much. This is amazing of what you're telling us. Go tell your boss. And they're like, nope, I'll get fired. I've seen it. I've seen the wreckage of other people. And so they made it safe. They started with heart. They cared about you as a human being. They sat with you. You had no qualms about saying, I have no idea what to do next.
Yep. Yeah. They were great to work with.
So that's, I want our listeners to hear. You need to start with heart. Stop saying you don't have time to train. You might not have time to train. So you get someone that has batteries included. You don't have to train. You still have to spend time with them as a human being, or they will leave. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about what brought you to where you are today. So the flip side of like, oh my God, I have the most amazing bosses in the world, to you come into a national organization, which you would think like, holy cow, I've made it. Went from working in Susan and Lainey with them, at the kitchen table, to now I'm being brought in. The company was sold to a national organization. And here I am. I made it from the, proverbial couch to the national organization. And I walk in there, and I remember, because I was there, I've had several calls with you where you're like, it's a disaster. Like, I don't know what to do. You knew how to do funding. Nobody knew how to do funding better than you. But then you come into a national organization where there's no structure. The owner's changing their mind constantly. So talk to us a little bit, and this is not to berate anyone, but I want to use it as a case study from going to a small mom and pop where they started with heart. They made it safe. They poured into you. Now, yes, you needed some training, but I would assert your training was skyrocketed because of how they treated you as a human, because you're able to digest what they said to you. You weren't in constant fear and trauma all the time, right?
Yeah. So actually, thinking back, when this national organization took over, I felt like, oh yes, this is great. I'm with a bigger organization. They were investing in me in a way that wasn't quite right. They were investing in me in that they flew me out to train with them and get set up and train a new employee. They invested in me that they flew me out to Expo, which I learned a lot from. So they were investing in me in ways that were helpful, but they weren't investing as a human. They weren't taking the time to work with me one-on-one. So I appreciate a lot that I got from it, but at the end of the day, I wasn't being treated correctly as far as my workload and what they're expecting from me and how they were treating me and appreciating what I was doing for them. So yeah, there's different ways to take that, but yeah.
Well, I love what you said too. They were investing in you, sending you off to expos, which I'm hearing, you were grateful for. You did learn some things around, but attorneys, listen, like it doesn't matter when you're not, given the feedback, you're not given the proper time and attention, you're going to leave. They're going to leave. Your employees are. So Jessica, that story that you just shared is so profound. And I really feel horrible, and it breaks my heart for the attorney that's not going to take this to heart and not really listen to that. Because I remember you knew how to do your job. You had the skills, you had the knowledge, and I would be on phone calls with you. And I was an owner in that company, but that was not my division to manage so my partner was managing that division. And I think there was another person, a manager. So it was the attorney plus the manager. And even the manager would call me all the time, be like, Molly, this is a disaster. I'm like, it's the human, it's the personality of the quote unquote boss. And, it doesn't matter. Jessica has all the skills, has all the knowledge, everything, but every single phone call you got in, it was different. The feedback that you got was not coaching. It was flat out criticism with just pointing of problems with no proposed solution. And then the system and the process we could change every single time that we got on those calls. I remember at one point, I'm like, I'm out on these calls anymore. I don't agree with how this is going. This is a sinking ship, the way that you're running this. And it doesn't matter because we have the skill set, we have the knowledge, we have the process, we have the standards. It was just the boss, it was just the attorney that was completely in the way. Like, let go of everything and let Deb run it all. But, I
think they were trying to automate things that can't necessarily be automated. Sometimes you need a human you can't just expect a program to fill out forms, and you have to have a human fill these things out. You can't automate everything.
Oh my gosh, you just hit another amazing point. That's so fantastic. So trying to take a human and take the humanness, again, talking about that, humanness out of and turn it into automation. So there's pieces that can be automated, but it's not all about automation, guys. It's not all about efficiency. It's not all about like tracking what the profitability of this is. You're in the personal services industry. Like, to your point, Jessica,
and especially with funding, it needs to be accurate.
Yeah, it needs to be accurate. But not only that, funding, you're dealing with clients, as well as anybody. A client walks out to their mailbox, they get their statements and they freak out and they want to talk to someone. What do I do with the 401k now? What do I do with the blah, blah, blah? They just want reassurance, right? You can't automate the client experience of giving them, comfort and safety and letting them know that you have their back. An automated email is not going to do that. But when you're able to pick up the phone and call Jessica and her say, oh, Mrs. Smith, don't you worry. We already know. Don't you worry. You just put that in your little folder in our next meeting, blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yep. Absolutely.
So what would be, in closing, if you could just give us your nuggets of wisdom here in regards to law firms that are hiring and or have existing employees in their firm that maybe don't have the, on paper resume, specific skill set, what have you. And for the attorneys that might be hiring right now, they're like, nope, I don't want to even talk to this person. They don't have a skill set. They don't have what it takes. What would you say to them to shift their thinking and start maybe, that they might be passing up on a Jessica?
Sure. I guess if you don't take the time to sit down and see what somebody's good at and see if it's something that they're going to be able to do well, then how do you know? If you're not going to take the time to find out if it's right for them and give them the tools that they need to see if it's right for them, then how would you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So at least have the conversation and meet with the person and hire them from the human side of them. If they have the attention to detail, they have the deep desire to say, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me, train me, show me, and I promise I'll pick it up and be self-governing. I mean, that's ultimately the greatest assets that an employee brings to the table.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your business.
Well, I do funding from start to end. It's sometimes boring because it's the same TD Ameritrade investment form I'm filling out 50 times, but sometimes it's exciting because I get to talk with clients and chit chat. And sometimes it's frustrating because I'm not able to find a form. It's a whole roller coaster. It's fun and it's hard at times and it's boring at times, but at the end of the day, I love what I'm doing.
Oh, employees, if you're listening, that is so fantastic. It's frustrating at times. It's fun at times. It's tedious at times. Sometimes I'm on a witch hunt for what have you, and embracing the suck as much as you embrace the love, right? Mm-hmm. I love that. So you do everything. You do from funding in regards to filling out the files, but you also do client communication on behalf of the law firm?
Yep, I will, if that's okay with the firm. Each of the firms I work with are different. Some want their clients to know I'm an outsourced company and are very open to letting them know I'm with fundies. I'm not with their law firm. Some other firms would prefer that their clients think I work in the office, which it's so simple. All I need is an email set up with your law firm and I can email back and forth to your clients. I can call them. There's no reason they don't know that I'm not in a back room in your office. Essentially, I'm working for you. So it's pretty much however the law firms want to move forward. I'm open to any options that they want for communications with the clients, but it's obviously always easiest when I'm able to communicate with the clients because it drops out the third party person within your firm that's taking up time having to pass on information. I at the end of the day love what I do, and I start with the statements. I can prepare the asset table from the very beginning, and then at the end, I will prepare a completion package with all the confirmations. So it's really a full package, start to finish process.
You're just throwing out all these buzz terms in funding: completion package, asset table. I mean, hello, you did not know those terms when you answered that ad on Craigslist, right? Oh. And now you're doing client communication. You own your own business and you are able to spit out all these words, Ameritrade forms, asset tables. Like, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, I think when I started, I didn't know the difference between an IRA or a brokerage account. So I've come quite a far ways since
Yes,
then.
You have. Yes, you have. And just a big, big, big public shout out to Miss Laney and to Susan as well. And they are just the poster women for how to hire human beings and pour into human beings. So, as you know, Laney and I have been screaming this from the rooftops for 25 years, and we're just so passionate about. You're like my favorite story. I don't get excited about placing the, senior associate attorney. I don't get excited about the paralegal that comes, with a briefcase full of all these years of service in law firms and just proof of concept and all that. I get excited, and it drives Laney and I to tears of joy about your story, Jessica, and the stories such as yours, especially when we get to reconnect with people 9 years later and hear this. We're like, yes, finally, like bosses that get it and entrepreneurs, lawyers that get it. So how can we find you?
You can go to my website is www.fund-ease.com. Or you can reach me at jessica@fund-ease.com.
Great. I'll put it in the show notes as well. By all means, I highly recommend, especially if you're in this estate planning area, that even if you have a paralegal. I know you and I chatted. I just sent another law firm to you yesterday, and they're so excited. And I've sent many people to you, and they are just delighted with your service. And to quote one of my dear attorney friends that said to me, Tim said to me when he reconnected us, because I just found you recently through another attorney, and he said to me, please don't tell people about her. I don't want her to get so busy that she can't do all my work. So sorry, Tim, I'm telling the world about her. Oh, Jessica, thank you. I'm so glad that we reconnected. I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for the work that you do, especially in funding. I have so many law firms that they're like, and paralegals even, that are busy with drafting and what have you, just like Lainey's story. And they're like, I can't handle the funding because I don't feel like I can do a good job, because a lot of it is the client communication and communication with financial institutions, and big portion of funding.
It's its own job. It's not something that can be done on the side with 50 other tasks. It really is a one person job.
Yeah, it is. And I would say that it's an area that what most law firms are waking up at 2:00 in the morning with, because they don't know what to do with funding, and nobody has the time to invest in it. So to your point, it is a full-time solo job.
Yeah. And so much time is spent on the front end making these trusts. They don't do any good if they're not funded, if they're not set up appropriately. So it's a very important part of the whole estate planning.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your work that you do. And thank you for sharing your story. Seriously, it just warms my heart so much for, the entrepreneurs that are willing to invest in the human being. And, attorneys, if you really are not shifting your mindset around this, if nothing else, even if you hire somebody with all the amazing skill sets and they look fantastic on paper and a resume, you're still going to have to invest in the human if you want them to be around 9 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Miss Jessica. Grateful for you. We'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
All right. This has been another episode of Hiring and Empowering Solutions podcast. We look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Have a great week.